Love is our true divine nature, and our heart serves as the intersection of the spiritual and physical, connecting our soul with our body as the conduit for anchoring our divinity onto the earth plane. Embodying our divinity is the key to our ascension and to manifesting our highest destiny in this life. The teachings of the heart are alchemy. Join spiritual mentor and channel Jennifer Spohr each week on a sacred journey to lift the veil to remembering your divinity and meet other beautiful souls who are living the path of the awakened heart. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the show. And it is my pleasure to share with you a guest today. Her name is Heather Cypel, and she is an intuitive psyche, energy body, and relationship energy specialist who facilitates transformation at the quantum energetic level. She works with the operating system beneath frozen trauma, where relational patterns are encoded and run. Welcome, Heather.
Hello, thank you so much for having me today.
I know I'm excited to have you, and I love that you specialize in, there are a lot of different aspects of your work, but ultimately a lot of it is geared toward relational, which is great because relationships, how we relate to ourselves and others is always a hot button. I'd say in all the areas of our life, relationships is probably right up there with money. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a big one. So I'm
Well,
really,
and it's close to our heart. Money is a bit more tangible, it can give anxiety, but relationships,
yeah,
that'll pull on your heartstrings.
yes, yes, absolutely. So I'm excited that you're here with us today to speak to all things relationships. So with that being said, I would love for you to share with us more about what led you to this path and also just more about your work in general.
Yes, definitely. So, after doing energy work and healing from things like anxiety and, maybe some minor health stuff, I really delved into exploring, deep level energy work where you drop into your energy body. You really get hands on with what's going on, the patterns that are operating in your system, and um, things like repairing the energy body and whatnot. And at some point, probably around 6 or 7 years ago, I hit a glass ceiling, even with that level. And that level's pretty deep. When people access that level of skill set in energy work, they're like, I have reached the pinnacle. And I was sorely
I'm
disappointed.
here.
Exactly. Like I can go anywhere in my system, I can handle anything. And I definitely felt that way at one point. And then I reached a glass ceiling where it got to the every time I would do energy work inside of my system, it just was not shifting like it used to. And it had been going on for a little while, and I just kind of sent a little SOS from my heart out to spirit saying, I'm super grateful for all of the energy work that I have learned. And I'm grateful that I can hands on participate with co creating this life experience and navigating my own stuff. But I'm actually going to need energy work that works faster and more consistently, like consistent results. And it took a little minute, but eventually some energy tools downloaded through me, and I was beyond pleased. I really thought I was going to find a training somewhere where somebody was talking about, reaching a glass ceiling and having, these different things to work in energy space. But I was pleasantly surprised when it just came through. It had a steep little learning curve to work with these tools, but it's easier sometimes when you learn it in a classroom kind of setting. But it was really great, and I learned some really amazing things about the energy body that I don't hear anybody talking about. And I'm just super excited to share those things.
Yeah. So tell us more about your work. What you mentioned that you don't hear anyone else talking about it. I'd love for you to share what is unique about your work and how it shifts others.
Yes, definitely. So I mean, honestly, I can't speak enough about that first energy tool that downloaded because two of them actually came through and it really unlocked a lot of what I previously thought. It added on to it to really create a more holistic understanding of how we're constellated as humans because yeah, I'm an intuitive psyche specialist. What that means is that I can sort of virtual tour through someone's massively unique codings, their archetypal processes, the astrology, all the things that make us coded the way that we are, in addition to our likes and dislikes. We're highly unique beings,
Mm-hmm.
and I can kind of virtual tour through someone's system and explain things to them quite easily, which makes it a lot easier when it comes to relational issues that are arising. I can explain someone's operating system to them and their partner's operating system, which operates a little bit differently. And you'd be surprised at how many people have been knowing somebody for decades, even, and don't fully comprehend them because when we have our operating system, we really see through that lens.
Mm-hmm.
It's as though we're we're coded in a certain way. And so it's like a different language or, a different operating system when we're interfacing with other people. And sometimes I think a lot of miscommunications just come from that particular space. We take things based on our own wounding that, shapes the lens of how we see other people, how we feel, those emotional responses that arise before our brain even gets a chance to process what's happening. Yeah, all of that stuff is active. And so, the coding and the operating system is my jam for sure. But whenever I was working with this first energy tool, one of the things that I realized after a little while was that it was actually melting away energy that was like really, really frozen. And I was like, wait a minute, what is this? Like, what's going on? Because I mean, I had navigated in my inner world all over the place from head to toe about all sorts of different topics. There's lots of open space, right? So what's all this frozen energy go? And so I realized that there's layers to our system. And, like before we're awakened, before we know anything about energy work, we can make a decision and shift things in our life. We can, you don't need energy work to do a certain amount of shifting. And then when you learn energy work, you get a certain amount of tools. And so your options for shifting things become greater. And then you learn more tools, and then now you have more options, to create those shifts and implement those shifts. And I realized that this frozen energy is a ways into our system, and that our deepest wounds are encapsulated in this frozen energy. And so we do tons of work to get to the root cause of things, right? You see this, people talking about the root cause everywhere. But what I've come to realize is that the root cause of something could be in this level or this level or this level or this level. And certainly you can clear it and resolve it if you are able to work in the energy space that root is actually housed, right? But
Mm-hmm.
if it's still going and you've got threat, or maybe you've cleared some of it, but you haven't actually gotten to the whole root system, right? It's in a different layer of the system and it requires different process. It's actually kind of logical when you think of it that way. You're like, oh, yeah, okay, different tools can do different processes,
Mm-hmm.
and different layers. You can access different depths of something. And, I went through the school of thought at one point where you're like, okay, those deepest wounds really may never be resolved. Like we may never work the whole of it, until I got to this level. And I was like, oh, here's where you get like rid of a ton of stuff. And I'm not saying that there's not more levels later. I'm saying I haven't accessed them yet, but I can't wait for them for sure. But I've been very pleased with this level and the level of tangible world shifts that occur. because you're actually shifting your operating system. And that frozen energy, I realized that encapsulates this type of work that we could do, but you kind of come up on that frozen layer. I'm seeing people who are in plant medicine space working pieces, and they're interfacing with that frozen energy. I'm seeing people who try to talk it out, and it's all this convoluted frozenness. I see people who are still hung up on certain issues or having like pain around certain pieces. Definitely our political situation recently has activated a lot of that for a lot of people recently. You could see all of that pain and frustration happening in someone. But what's most fascinating to me, I know a lot of people want to focus on getting rid of the pain, and that is great. But what was most fascinating to me is that when we have these painful events happen in our lives and that energy freezes kind of like in that moment, most of it is not pain, right? So I really had a new reframing of the entire concept of trauma. Like when trauma hits our system, it freezes a lot of it. And some of those pieces in that frozen energy are painful emotions and a lack of ability to process correctly and understand it and then hold your own when dealing with that kind of situation. So it's a complex thing, but the vast majority of that energy is just your own energy that got frozen. And so we hear a lot in this world nowadays how people are talking about being exhausted, like soul level exhausted, done with, people who are just, not easy to contend with or dealing with these painful situations, especially money issues. We have a lot of frozen energy around that. And what it does is it limits our own ability to handle life. And a lot of people feel like they're sort of still giving from an empty cup when the way I was able to see it afterwards was like that glass is actually filled with ice. And then every day we refill with our usable energy, like water. And then throughout the day, as you're drinking this energy, you're using your energy throughout the day. It can feel like it runs out and then you're running on empty, but technically that glass is still full. It's just frozen energy that's not utilizable.
Mhm. You use the term frozen a lot. How does that differentiate between like blocked energy or suppressed energy, or is frozen another way to describe?
It can create all of those experiences, also creates all of our trauma responses. So fight, flight,
Right.
freeze, and fawn, um, and it creates a lot of unresolvedness, right? Like we can't really fully process, we can't really get over it. And it definitely looks a lot like all of our limitations, quite frankly, but that most of it is our own energy. So when we're defrosting as a resolution process, we defrost it. Certainly, some of the pain is going to release, but the vast majority is going to stay in your body as utilizable energy going forward, right?
Right. I just wanted to clarify that, right? Because the frozen, the way that's referred to, isn't totally different necessarily. At the end of the day, what you're saying is that this frozen energy is something that is being stored
Yes.
within your field and even your physical body that,
Yep.
right, that through bringing it forward sometimes, not sometimes, I mean, let's just, say all the time when you're, as you said, defrosting, right?
Yep.
The darker side of whatever it is that's been frozen is the way that you speak of it, or it's been stored in the body, which is what I say a lot, um, is going to come forward, right?
Yes.
Again, to be released, whether it's trauma or, something else. But it is part of the natural process of thawing, as you would say, right?
It is. It is. Yeah, because when you defrost, what I say is like we have these emotion bubbles, sort of like air bubbles in
Mhm.
ice, you know? And so when you're defrosting, it kind of, creates a little broken seal right there, and that emotion escapes. It doesn't mean that because you no longer feel pain around that issue or that situation, it doesn't mean that all of the frozen energy is gone, right? It just means that
Right,
that huge emotion bubble released and you still have
right.
more of your own energy to go back and reclaim.
So this is this is part of the process of what is occurring. What are some of the most significant results that you notice that clients experience once those shifts have taken place?
So definitely emotion bubbles releasing and they can feel a lot lighter. But then you can see past it, right? Like when you move past a block, you can comprehend differently about a particular situation. I call those epiphanies. So you can have epiphanies that lead you to further new options available, new ways of seeing things, even if it was in the past, right? My favorite is getting my own energy back as a result. Like that is just one of my absolute favorites. Because I was at a place where I was like so exhausted, soul level
Mhm.
exhausted. And so having that, like revitalization naturally occurring every day when I wake up is it's worth a lot to me,
Yeah, it's like that credit card commercial, where I don't want to name any brands on here, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
But where it says da 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 this thing, this amount of dollars, and then da 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 this priceless.
Yes, it's priceless for sure.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. But the other thing that I really love too as a result is something I call uneclipsing.
mhm,
And it means the things that you've been looking for, searching for, it's your heart's desire. You have been wanting this thing. Maybe you've been searching online for years for it, whatever the thing. When you defrost, right, that ice starts to melt away, and then it's logical. Your energy body is what's communicating with spirit, right? And
mhm.
spirit can just land the very correct things in these more accessed parts of your energy
Yeah,
body. And then you realize in hindsight, like this probably was always around. I just could not connect with it. So that uneclipsing of new options for me was a huge one too, because I had been hunting for a health issue resolution for over 30 years, spent tens of thousands of dollars on doctors and practitioners and chiropractors and therapies and gyms and, all the things to only have further and further degradation. And it was a musculoskeletal issue. And no one was, I was asking anybody and everybody. I was hunting for this resolution. And when I was doing my energy work, when I started defrosting, I was defrosting for emotional stuff. It wasn't, I didn't even think about my physical body and like, because it had been so long and I had still gone through my process of like, giving myself a little bit of relief, stretching here and there or whatnot. But after a while, I started noticing that my body was feeling very different and that a lot of those emotions literally were housed in my muscles, in my organs, oh, especially in the soft tissue. And that was starting to shift. And right as about that, I noticed that, like, oh my God, my muscles and my whole body is feeling different. The very correct resolutions for my health issues started landing like one after another. They're still coming in, like the very next thing, the next step, the next. And I've had about a decade's worth of repair to my health issue. I still have 2/3 of the way to go, but I'm like, I know what to do now, and I'm doing it, and it's working. And so it uneclipsed the very correct things for me.
a lot of the folks that listen to this podcast have been on their journey for a while, right? They're not
Yeah.
newly waking up and including their own, I say, healing journey, but like really healing is remembrance. So, what would be like, just to simplify for folks, what would be the two or three reasons why someone would reach out to work with you. Just to clarify for folks.
Yeah. Well, I love relationship energy stuff, so personal resolution or relationship resolution
Hmm.
is a really good, I mean, it's just what I enjoy, right? Because relationships are so close to our hearts. And it's not like we are alone in our life working through our healing process and then we begin interacting with people in our world. We're born interacting with people and we have these dynamics that are playing out and it's complex. And then we awaken and then we're like, oh, this is why this, right? So we're sort of in the middle of a tangled process anyways. And it's, I think, a lot easier when people can work through that with someone who actually comprehends operating system and behavioral pattern processing and internal constellations and whatnot. Because there's quickness. We can move through what's not what. When people come to me, they're usually under misconceptions about what's happening in their dynamic. And they're trying to work on pieces, especially in themselves, that aren't the piece to work. It's like some people will come to me and say, I know, like, I have a worthiness issue and I have to heal that. And I can feel in their operating system. And I'm like, no, actually, you're one of the 40% of people who absolutely need positive feedback, like they need air to breathe. And what's happening is you're not getting that positive feedback or you're not getting enough of it. So that's where we actually need to do the work, is just to have you receive the positive feedback so that you're not feeling unworthy. So you don't need to, like, tell yourself you're worthy, because that's not how your system interfaces with it. So that would be like an example that someone recently came to me with, and I'm like, that's not your piece. Let's refocus you to where your work is actually going to be beneficial. And to really, I mean, I give lots of levels of tips, even if it's like, keep an ongoing list of this kind of stuff. I give like smaller, tangible processes that one can do. I give inner exploration processes. And of course, I highly recommend my little library online that I have in my store of the energy transmissions that I created that will assist to begin to defrost the energy body. Those have been profound. And in fact, I still listen to them every night, as it, going forward, because it's just so beneficial.
What are, you've spoken a lot to many amazing results and shifts that are experienced from the work that you do. What are some tangible shifts and results that people experience from your work?
So we could do a lot.
Just like
Definitely
the top ones are good. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, yeah, like every single person that has come to me to manifest a new romantic partner has done so statistically within 2 months. That I didn't realize until one day I turned back and just kind of thought back through, and I was like, dang, that happened, like
Yeah.
everyone that's come through. Now, the thing about it is, if they were able to continue forward in that relationship was dependent upon what was happening, of course, in their energy body. And some of them did, some of them still are in that very same relationship to this day. A lot of people come to me when they already know their pattern, they know pieces that they need to work. And they're like, okay, what do I do to resolve this? A lot of people come to me and say, do I have to leave this relationship? Like, I really love this person, but do I have to, give it up and like
Yeah.
attract something different? That's a big question that people come to me with, for sure. And we can look, we can explore, and we can see. And we also know by this level that what you're attracted to subconsciously in a person is probably what you're going to attract in your next relationship too. So a lot of people, when they're in it though, when they're in that thick of that relationship, they're like, I know I have my own pieces, but like, he's got his own pieces too. And do I just need to change the person, or is it actually inner development work?
Well,
So
that questioning of, is it me, is it them? All these questions go back to how clear someone is anchored in their own truth, right? Because if someone's deeply rooted in their knowing, do they have all these questions?
I mean, that's the thing is that when it hits our emotional sector, it can kind of make us like question these things because it is complex, right? And a lot of these things, technically, if we want to break it down, is complex PTSD that you're dealing with. So I don't think people should be super hard on themselves when they're like, I feel strange, like this
Yeah.
is hard. It's definitely very natural, and it's painful when you have a relationship that you want to do better, to be better, to be more connected, to be more healthy, to be more alive. And I say a very startling statistic, which is 80% of how a relationship goes is dependent upon what's happening in the female's energy body
Mhm.
because of the way that our systems are designed naturally to emanate a pulse. And a lot of our energy bodies are frozen. So that pulse isn't coming through. So we're operating on a mind level with our partner.
Mhm.
And I've seen it. I've seen the shifts. I've seen it when it happens. I've seen it when it's not happening. And I've seen it when it shuts off. And so I know this is true by exploration of many, many different situations. You can feel it when that connection is alive and happening. It's technically a telepathic connection. It's from both people's hearts bonding and connecting. And it's like you could be speaking in whatever verbiage you want, and that person could have no paradigm for that verbiage but totally get what you're saying. It's like, you're on point. That
Mhm.
connection really carries about 75% of the relationship and the interaction. But certainly things hurt our heart, especially when somebody's close to us, and especially for a longer period of time of them being close to us. It's natural for them to trigger or upset us or do something or us perceive something from an incorrect lens or whatever. And part of our heart shuts off, right? And so communication also goes down. And then that's where those questions can come in of like, but I love him a lot, but this is just not really working anymore, or I want more. And I always say, you create that inside of your heart, create that inside of your system first. And when your system starts naturally pulsing out, he'll pick it up again. It will happen. It's a progression, but it can happen.
I'd love to hear more from you about the journey of embodiment, right? Because it's one thing to know who we are and to know our work. Um, but, from through your lens and your own journey, how did you make the shift from awareness into embodying that awareness through your day-to-day life?
Well, I have two answers.
Okay.
Okay, so one answer, like referring to sort of what I was just talking about there, of like the connection and then the connection being cut off and then having to heal. And, I actually lived it before I had any awareness, and I had experiential knowledge first. And I feel like experiential knowledge sometimes is deeper and more embodied than when we learn it and then have to embody it.
Mhm.
Because on the other hand, I did learn lots and lots, and it was kind of heady, it was kind of not fully dropped in to the body. And certainly in the early stages of awakening, I learned all sorts of things that was sort of etherical. It was out there. And so we don't have a natural ability, I guess you could say, or like it's not just the thing that we do to embody that type of work. And I'm an air sign, so I'm already like in my head and up. And so embodiment was a whole journey for me. And I was like, what? And it actually feels different. There's multiple ways to get certain pieces landed in a system like mine that, is kind of up. And when I realized, like, quite frankly, the more that I defrosted, the more my knowledge just started to like land in my body, and it became very, very natural for me to implement that. But I do teach a lot from experiential, like I can feel it in my body, even when a client comes to me and they're talking about what's happening. I can feel what's going on in their body, even though they're not embodied in that particular area of their system, right? And so I can also feel it when I'm not embodied in a particular spot in my system. And it feels, I don't want to say flat, but it feels almost hologrammy or something, it feels theoretical or something, until I ground something in. And then when you ground it in, you can start living that way, right? You can start doing those tangible actions. Sometimes you could do tangible actions to start pumping yourself to get embodied in that way, right? But I like to, it's easier, at least for me, to like create that space in my energy body and connect with it, and then that's the place where you can start feeling the wisdom, right? It's like you're connected with your body wisdom, and then your natural process and decisions just come forward from that.
So it's somatic. So where do you feel that wisdom in your body?
Well, as an intuitive psyche specialist, I believe every cell in our whole body has specific wisdom and specific coding. So it can be felt wherever that process is happening. So that part of your life, say, for example, it might be your knee or something, or your pinky toe or a tooth, but generally speaking, the more like broad general space, I actually feel it right here. I'm like, what is that? It's like, is that my esophagus? Like my
Your upper
wisdom
solar area.
comes through
Yeah.
my esophagus.
Yeah. No, I ask that, right? Because it can be different for different people.
Yeah,
But what is universal is creating, it's part of what you've described, which is creating that space for yourself. And I
yeah,
recommend on a daily basis, creating that space for yourself to feel into that wisdom and also where it's coming from in your body. And likewise, when you're feeling limited, right, or feeling resistance, creating the space to feel into where that is in your
yes,
body as well. So it's a willingness to really get into your body and in my experience and from my perspective, that is the key to being fully embodied in the truth of who you are and to living that through your physical reality. Because then once you're in your body, then it's really a matter of refinement from there, right? Through your day-to-day decisions. It's like,
yeah,
oh, that meal I'm having or that person that I'm choosing to talk with is all of that, in coherence
yeah.
with what I'm feeling is aligned in my body.
That's right. Yeah, and different people can pop out of that in a moment, the snap of a finger, in a split second.
Mhm.
So for some of us, we have to do a practice like that maybe a little more often, or twice a day, or, I mean, I know whenever I was first awakening, I was doing that type of practice for hours in a day, just to develop that familiarity with my system. And the more and more that I opened up inside of myself through this journey of energy work and
Mhm.
inner development, the more spaces that I didn't have to tune in quite as much to, it was just naturally always connected. So
Yeah.
I think that there's a reforging of that connection with a lot of the places in our system that's really probably going to take us decades because of how we grew up in such a disconnected way.
Yeah. Maybe not. I feel like
Maybe not.
it's possible. It is timing is fluid. It's always fluid and it really all
Yeah.
goes back to our own willingness and free will decisions. So in closing, I'd love for you just to bring forward anything else you're feeling intuitively guided to share with us.
Yes. So for anybody who's like, how do I start defrosting? I do have energy transmissions available in my store on my website, which is heathercypel.com. But I also have a free mini trauma energy deletion, energy transmission, sorry. And you can download that. I recommend like uploading it into the player that is it on a device next to where you're sleeping and putting it on repeat. That's what I do for mine. I just put it on repeat. And I personally turn the volume all the way down because it's transmitting energy one way or the other. So I like silence when I sleep, but and just put it on all night long. And for the free one, it's kind of a general one, right? It'll just kind of defrost frozen energy. And then the ones on my website are very specific. So if you know you have, say, for example, a wounding of betrayal or abandonment or loss, the big ones I tried to do these general recordings for. So that would be a really great one to ponder and consider implementing into your nightly routine, I guess you could say, as probably some of the easiest energy work that we'll ever do is clicking play. Yeah, and I've noticed a big difference in listening to my own recordings overnight too, because sometimes it'll get into a deeper layer while we're sleeping. Um, yeah, I mean, I just highly recommend it because
Yeah.
I think it's the bee's knees.
And we have, yeah, and we will have the link to your website and your free gift and everything in the show notes. Is there anywhere else that you'd like to steer people who feel guided to connect with you?
Yes, well, so I didn't mention that if anybody's actually interested in doing this type of energy work that I was talking about, because I didn't even really go into explaining much about dismantling those junk programs that are encapsulated under the frozen energy. That's like a whole nother episode. But I do have an energy school where I teach that. You can find that on my website. But otherwise, to connect with me, I have a free Facebook group on Facebook called Modern Consciousness, and I teach about energetics of the energy body, and have featured speakers in there too. So if anyone's interested, they can come and join me there.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Heather, for coming on to share your wisdom. So deeply appreciated. And thank you also for your service and for the work that you do, as it is a journey that requires a lot of conviction and a lot of courage. So thank you
Yes.
so much for coming on today. Appreciate you.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Path of the Awakened Heart. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or pathoftheawakenedheart.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about living with an awakened heart and navigating your ascension journey, visit me at jenniferspore.com.